Okay, hello. This is not going to be an easy plight. First of all, recording. I'm still in the Republic of Guyana when I am putting this out there. So, anyway, this type of article or kind of mini book that I have written, this basically dealing with, I probably have another meaning to the book, but just say I put jealousy and means, in other words, this type of currency of discovering part of life. Yes, no, I guess as a little girl, but it all comes to the way this type of mom functions and very straightforward. It will deal with these type of things as I go on, but I'll try to go fast. But if I don't, I will probably have a continuation of those things. So it would say, as a little child in that grandmother's backyard, I was able to discover a lot of things of which I was forgotten because it's been so long. And knowing that I did escape one day, based on the Lateran, that's six in another siècle, in other words, of how the evolution of the world is going, of how I probably pooped, and that pooped would be called kungsi, and oftentimes it comes in sin of Aphrodite, meaning that this type of dynasty, it cannot be considered a dynasty of a normalcy. In other words, it cannot be something that seeks to be served by throwing it out there and go and serve. So a lot of people were probably allowed to go on with their lives. It shouldn't be a headache. It's just a way of do not seek the child. It's not complicated. Now, what would probably go bad is just the lead that went bad, and what would consider to be left with something of this that went bad. And when it goes bad, it's not allowing man to get close to the child, one, and it's not allowing the man to see the child or to even be close to her children. Anything of this type of descendant line, and you cannot force those things. The rest may go. So, by Phoebe Blake Kazay. So, let's talk about what is my actuality. And oftentimes it deals with the travel ride of fashionist, décidé ansi. Oftentimes, this overcrowdingness of which she feels, it's a little emotional, overwhelming for the child. The aspect of they do understand that part, but they say they like her in Guyana. Guyana is calling for something. You're not supposed to even be in Guyana. No man, specimens perhaps, but those things are contained, and it has to allow only her and a big vast demure, especially when she's gotten to that age and has to demonstrate certain things. Now, I would say it's chapter 1. My tease is droll, meaning that the way she will travel is quite droll, and I would add in brackets fruits. And when it comes with a note that contains this type of thing here, this type of slash circle, it's simply saying that do not seek to travel with her. I'm having nincompoops, people of low grade, irrational, no people seeking to have extramarital affairs, having sexual intercourses, feeling themselves. Next to the child, the poor pilot is not able to accommodate these things and have destinations to go on. And I don't know if you're considered low life in Guyana. You're just not needing to seek the child. It's not complicated. Now I have all Negroes with feet that are cut off that are trying to get close to the child. The hotel was kind of very convivial, a family hotel, Indian tribe, and got invaded by things that were not there originally, and demands had to be made. So Décidé Ansi is quite right up the alley. Now, when it talks about the teas, for example, this is something that I've done, I don't know, quite a while, and it would do a tea of this nature. I cannot go very high, in other words, meaning that, yes, I've known too much, but it's still part of my mind. And I have to leave what is sheets and all these things alone. Now, is it based on traveling? Correct. And when I get to the end of the chapter, I'll explain to you that part. So, for example, I kind of have Atlanta as the port of Embarcadero, and a place of Greece, that port of disembarkment, meaning that I often start here in Atlanta and oftentimes ends up in Greece. Now, as I travel from Atlanta, it's often demands to stop in Paris, and there she kind of spends time there because the way I've done it, I suppose I did at Atlanta, Greece, and oftentimes at Atlanta, Greece, did it this way, and this way is quite a way of saying at this day and see could not have been done to that country of Greece. Fashion is could not have been done, so that part of the rye had to be kind of pioshed. I wouldn't say stolen, pioshed, meaning that it has its revelations as this mom speaks. So it would say it happened in, for example, New York, New York. To in a New York City, a flight, for example, of somebody else, of I don't know, New York, California to New York, and when that was done, that person could have put this kind of how this type of knot decided that I could not spin. So if it could not spin that way, then it becomes an actuality, and an actuality is revealing to be kind of true. But just say that this type of Y wasn't allowed in America, for example. I would say hashtag. Go to your hashtag, and your hashtag would say you would have the sheet of the child in there. So you would decide that I want that, and that's kind of telling you that there's a hospital named St. Jude, very dangerous for stealing these things from man. Cannot be stealing, they are genetics. So you cannot do so. So just go to your hashtag. Now it would say, let's leave that out. Just have Chaussette left for this type of country here, Paris, but kind of never the Chaussette would be. I don't think you would get that part. I just peeped out my glasses. The Chaussette will be kind of a this type of sheet. It would be a sheet, and the sheet would say left on the sheet, and once it says left, it captures it this way and guides the child. But oftentimes, as actuality becomes, Atlanta, Paris kind of goes away. Why? Because not only does it cost to get to Atlanta to get to Atlanta from the Republic of Guyana, but when I get there, I have to have a place to stay. And if I was on the road, just put it as something that is was sustenance seeking for this type of sheet here. In other words, what are you containing in the sheet that man is not being able to move forward with? And oftentimes gets stuck. And when I get stuck, the searchings become very confusing. Well, confusing this way, and is not able to move forward. So these type of interventions in the airport would know of the sheet, but decided to do investigations on man. And oftentimes these things have to go to court, so it would deal with it that way and leave the rest alone. So this type of pack here would say most of the time this destination was done so much that you have to kind of throw it out there, oops, leave it alone, oops, and say that it could be, but it demands a trip from the Republic of Guyana to Atlanta, have to have a place to stay there and then move along. Oftentimes, it's not sticking for a very long séjour in Atlanta. Why? I cannot be of actuality zone. Sometimes it's just 4 days, and 4 days in a hotel is impossible because we cannot have this type of fruit staying in the hotel very long, and most of the time I did. And 4 days would say I will talk about that part at the end. Now, once gets into Paris, it often gets from Paris straight to this part by train, meaning that instead of a boat, it goes this way, I would say, like this type of smiley face this way. It's from Paris to this part of Italy, because this type of tea goes from Atlanta to Paris. To get to the Paris to this type of Italy demands this type of this type of tea, this train to Italy, and this plus this. I guess it uses the air, or it could use an X as Y. So with this, you would probably find that in my, and oftentimes you'd find that in the hashtag. And oftentimes the my is not allowed for America. And that's why mom cannot live there at all anymore. And coming through, it's basically 4 days and get out. If it makes it difficult financially speaking, then I would not have known that based on the sheet that is of actuality with the Y in my. Now, you wouldn't find my in hashtag, but you would probably find the Y in hashtag, and the Y would make mom make a decision this way at her birth, and this way would do it this way to Santa Rosa. So if they're hiding it there, then it has to go to court one day. Yes, no, it has to go to court. So here to get to Italy would use 3 points, which would be her desk plus her air. So oftentimes the air doesn't pay yet based on my, and I will get to that at the end. So after the train, because they don't have trains, then it will call to get to Greece. It will be cause of this type of his with a minus that way. Oftentimes it's in the my, cannot get here yet. So Greece could be very long trip. So this type part of Italy has to be able to be something of a 3 points. 3 points could last this amount of time. And legally speaking, in other words, it likes to be close to volcanoes, so it will demand a little pushing, but they seem to have RR there, railroads there, or the X if you seek it in this part, and that will get her there. Now, it's accomplishing my T's. That's why I'm kind of explaining that part. The cost is high, so I kind of wrote this mini book, and oftentimes what I get for it, it's a pixel GIF, which means this type of pixel would be the A, and this type of GIF would be nozzle. And I guess the pixel would say, put it as an ad, that's pixel, and then the GIF I would use the nozzle of, and oftentimes it's use the nozzle of this T here. It's this T here that I'm using as this nozzle. And once I get this way, then I am on my way. And this book is for man to understand, not necessarily, but I needed to get this to my family. And I guess based on how this is, this is of that dad. I did not know that because of that sustainable sustenance of length plus latitude, meaning that the life of the child comes this and this way, not necessarily this way, and because of that length. So this part was done for actuality. And when that part come, I could be an old mom, but my hashtag can say I probably needed it this way. And if I did a lot of dabbling, then it explains why the funds of mom is kind of low. It's kind of low for the lowest of the hotels in Guyana. And Airbnb is in Georgetown. I cannot stay in Georgetown because of this type of my. And then man seeks to look up, but it's a bit too late for that part, so I will move along. Now, adds to this book, her life is conditioned to not know who she is. In other words, why she just chose to add out there and leave it alone, and Matt is supposed to say, wow, do you lead that person? Absolutely not. And that becomes war for the child. Why? The sheet of the child was given over to the pages, and the pages should have known. Like iMac, for example, if I got it twice, up, gone, and should have been able to give it to the child. Now, if you giving money based on selling a car or giving money based on a credit card, it has to be legitimate. It cannot be the credit card of somebody else. It has to be her credit card. In other words, when it maintains $2,500 of spending, pays $600, it allows you to do those things and not put it to $8,000 and not being able to understand that's debt. So basically speaking, it was thrown to the sheet of the child, and it does not stick. It balances on the person who's doing that part, waits for my, and the my is of a person straightforward. And that part probably will be eliminated based on how man has to get in touch with who is it that is trying to I don't know, deal with them in a very way that says get away. And I would say, and how do you explain that part? War, it's just the waves. This part is waves, means a wave of which I do hear voices and speak. So this type of wave comes in a way that I can explain it. It comes this way only, and I have waves of this, and now this way, and very spacey. So we'll see if the progression decides to flip out on the ears of the child, and who is supposed to be fueling those things decided to be a bad person. In other words, it's like an Oreo and not going home. And why would that happen? I guess you're trying to control the sheet of man and cannot stay with the child because she goes the opposite way. And if you're putting mental illness on the girl, she has to accept the mental illness because of the sheet. Could it be the CDNC? Correct. But she still gets fuel to move on. How? By ads. And you could find the ads conditioned to not know who she is and just know that it's war. Now, it's just the waves that pelts, man. If you put a video ad, then oftentimes it could come out quite like a wave, and that's dangerous for man because you're thinking that you have arrived to a destination of which you're not and have to go. So it would say this type of wave here seeks just who she is to get it out of this land, and you're not supposed to know that she's in and out of the land. She's just supposed to be there or not. How do you explain the mental illness? Well, it shifts, they suspect. And when it shifts, it does this to her, and releases these things, of which is basically for her kids. But you cannot fight her to get to her kids, to get to people that are not supposed to be there. Yes, no, that are not. And then they're realizing that it's the knots that turns the waves of the child, that does not allow the child to be of war yet. So put a video ad. So GIF type the notes would probably reveal in the nozzle. Probably is not allowed to do that part because of margins. In other words, ads seek to put it in the sheets of the child, and the child cannot be concerned with that. But if it's putting her in like a slum for it to work, so what you're going to do is send cops. All I have to do is pay my bill and stay there, and if the waves pelts you, then you get arrested with the sustenances that you say you have. And then if you're seeking to live with the child, I have kids. My kids cannot allow that. No. And then you will go, no, why? We get my grandmother, if she was half, she doesn't like them. And I grew up not liking them, and probably not whites either. So I would say that I'm very this way, still now. And those things are acceptable. And do not seek to come and say you're going to unbobbing the child. You cannot do so. I will not accept it. And that is why the mental illness could be considered very wavy in terms of why is she telling us this? We're not understanding this. I don't like it. So the American public went crazy on that part, and they have to face courts for that. That's all. Now, the nozzle could be a wave of a B, this way with the G of the child, which is the boot of the lips. It come in very wavy. And this bee could be very disobedient. Now, why? Because the drone wants to come in and put her out, and she is not allowing that. And I cannot admit of seeing these things. All I could have is one drone, which is one G, and that's all. So this type of bee is seeing to the bottomless pit of the person that is a crash, the person who have a mother-in-law problems, the person who has a foot that needs to be chopped off, the most atrocious thing she's seeing, and cause the world to go angry. Something of An. I guess it's the An of the donkey, which I know of the little days, comes this way, which kind of puts it in this format. Cannot be, that's her my. And it would be only at the air, which is bottom. Now the air would be in Italy, and not in the United States, not in the United States or Guyana. So this type of R would be just a way of how her ways are to get her to her destination. Oftentimes people are doing these type of thingies and it's not allowed. So I cannot book, okay? I just have to be. Now, how this type of S travels of sound, I put it more this way, like this type of chapeau here. If I've seen it in America, then those things have to go to court. So it will travel this way, this type of way, and cannot do this here. It just do this here, and it becomes a hat for mom, of which she uses her waves. Now, does it come first? Does it come like this type of R? It probably does, and the R would be just this of mom. When it's just this of mom here, then it's that's not. So when it comes as that's not, then I guess the not would be here. And when it seeks to come like a hat, it often uses the zoom video. And this is not ready yet, but this type of thing has been acquired. This cannot be acquired, and it's a no. So it would be something that kind of puts it like a downward spiral, and that downward spiral requires bathrooms, cannot be on the road. So when it's this way, mom just abides with this part of herself because she cannot control heavens or earth. Now, this type of thing, can it cause it? Absolutely. Why? Because it's a drone. And then you would realize she's not having what she needs. She doesn't have the G type, so that concerns her not. She has to be a drone. She cannot have these things. She's too evil. Now, why would she be here? She suspects war would send her here. Why? Why is this part of the child comes into stems? And these type of stems says, I'm having penises in there. I have problems with the bathrooms, of which she puts these type of penises in there. To come to find out, it goes very deep with the Spanish, the Espanols, even the French are being farted on. They were conned to these things based on this part of the child, but they probably were called to be. Why? Because I had cobs this way first. So when it's this way first, you cannot stand in the line, so it's war. Now, if she is overwhelmed by the war, she has to leave because of this here. So whatever she did this part, which I was silenced, has to be in the ads, she suspects. So her life and not the life of man. Move along. Now, it would say that this A wave, an abnormal autumn of fashion. So I would get it this way, but it's not really functional in Greece. Why? There's no money, and it has to be money. I cannot just sit there. And it's when it says abnormal, so it can seem very mental illness. And she only gets it to appear because of that video that I sent my family this way to make it more naughty. And in other words, these things can be considered, but it's a part of life. In other words, am I supposed to step out and allow these things and not expose her from the society of where I belong? And that has to be out of Guyana for what they have done. So this autumn G of normal stays with something with this type of hot R. So this type of of would be something of a penis or things that wants to concern the child that is not on the sheet. So I guess the sheet will say, I don't know, you put a knot there, it doesn't belong there. It's a she and it doesn't belong there. So what is the sheet? It's blank pages. And the blank pages will says, well, is it to put the life of somebody who should have been there and who cannot be there? Absolutely not. What is a sheet? Does everybody have a blank sheet? Correct. So you have to present your blank sheet to I guess the lead. And the lead is something that decided to go home. Doesn't deal with that because we have become war. And the lead oftentimes, it shakes. This here, I have red. So this red would say shh, and then knows why, and that's all. Now, to be able to function. Now, oftentimes this type of broken promise. Okay, my storage is a bit low, so I'm probably going to storage low, probably going to stop in a minute and continue on another video.